Most people believe strength lies in action, but true mastery is found in restraint. The greatest battles we fight are not with the world, but with ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a quiet power in the world, one that doesn't roar or demand attention. It is not found in dramatic gestures or heated exchanges. No, this power is subtle, steady, and unshakable. It is the power of not reacting. The average person spends their life as a puppet of circumstance. A harsh word is spoken and they flare up. A small inconvenience arises and frustration takes hold. They are pushed and pulled like a ship without a rudder, always at the mercy of the winds of life. But the person who learns to control their emotions becomes the captain of their fate. You see, the difference between those who drift and those who lead lies not in what happens to them, but in how they respond. Life will never fail to present challenges, obstacles, and provocations. Yet, in every moment you and I are given a choice. Will we react like a spark to a flame, or will we remain calm, deliberate, and in control? Here is a central truth worth remembering. He who rules his spirit is mightier than he who conquers a city. Strength does not lie in lashing out. It lies in holding steady when others expect you to break. The person who refuses to react in anger or fear immediately rises above the crowd. Why? Because they are no longer controlled by circumstance. They have chosen mastery. And mastery can be developed. Begin today with these simple steps. First, pause before you speak. A single breath can prevent a lifetime of regret. Second, ask yourself, is this worth my peace of mind? Most often, the answer is no. Third, remember that you are not obligated to attend every conflict you are invited to. Declining the invitation to anger is a mark of wisdom. Finally, shift your focus to your larger goal. Each time you choose calm over chaos, you protect your energy for the work that truly matters. When we learn to govern our emotions, we become like deep waters, steady, calm, and powerful. The storms may rage above, but beneath there is unshakable strength. So remember this line and carry it with you wherever you go. Reacting is easy. Responding with wisdom is power. A reaction is instinct. Response is wisdom. When we encounter a situation, especially one charged with emotion, our first impulse is often to react. This reaction is quick, automatic, and usually driven by the subconscious patterns of fear, anger, or defense that we have built over years of conditioning. It is a survival mechanism deeply wired into our biology, meant to protect us from danger. Yet in the modern world, danger is rarely a wild animal or a life or death struggle. It is more often a harsh word, an unexpected change, or a challenge to our patience. Reacting in those moments may keep us alive, but it does not necessarily help us live well. Reaction comes from a place of instinct, and instinct, though valuable, is limited in its vision. It sees only the immediate, never the long term. Response, however, is the mark of wisdom. To respond means to insert thought between stimulus and action. It is to pause, reflect, and choose an action that aligns not with our immediate emotions, but with our greater values and long-term vision. Where reaction is like a spark that leaps without direction, response is like a carefully tended flame, controlled and purposeful. A wise response does not ignore emotion, but it masters it, shaping it into something constructive rather than destructive. When someone insults you, reaction might urge you to lash back with equal force, but response allows you to see that meeting anger with anger only fuels the fire. By choosing not to react but to respond, you conserve your energy, preserve your dignity, and often disarm the situation entirely. The difference between reaction and response often defines the quality of our relationships and the course of our success. In business, a reactive mind may rush into decisions out of fear of missing out, while a responsive mind weighs the facts, considers the future, and chooses wisely. In personal life, reacting to every irritation can erode trust and harmony, while responding with patience builds stronger bonds. The one who learns to respond rather than react becomes a leader, for leadership is not about controlling others, but about controlling oneself. To cultivate the habit of response, one must first develop self-awareness. It begins with noticing the rise of emotion, recognizing the urge to react and pausing long enough to let the wave pass. A single breath can create space between impulse and action. That space is where wisdom lies. In that space, one can ask, what outcome do I truly want? What action will lead me closer to peace, growth, or progress? The more we practice this pause, the stronger our ability to respond becomes. Over time, the instinct to react loses its grip, and response becomes the new habit. This is not suppression of emotion, but mastery of it. It is the understanding that while we cannot control what others do or say, we can always control the meaning we give it and the action we take. In that mastery lies freedom, for the one who responds with wisdom is never a victim of circumstance, but always a creator of their own destiny. Emotions are servants, not masters. They were designed to guide us, to give signals about the state of our inner world and our interactions with the outer one. Joy tells us what to cherish, sadness reveals what we value, anger warns us of boundaries being crossed, and fear alerts us to potential threats. Each emotion carries a message, but they were never meant to hold the throne of decision-making. When emotions are treated as masters, they dictate our choices impulsively, often leading us down paths of regret. When treated as servants, they become advisors, useful, insightful, and powerful, yet always under the control of reason and higher purpose. The problem arises when we forget this natural order. People who allow anger to govern their words often destroy relationships they value most. Those who let fear master them often hide from opportunities that could change their lives. Sadness, when allowed to dominate, can lead to despair rather than healing. The truth is, emotions are powerful, but without direction they can be destructive. Just as fire can warm a home or burn it down, emotion must be managed by the one who owns it. Wisdom lies in stepping back and saying, "This feeling is here to inform me, not to control me." The most successful and fulfilled individuals understand this principle. They do not ignore or suppress their emotions, for that would be like silencing a messenger. Instead, they listen to what the emotion has to say, extract the lesson, and then make a conscious decision based on their values, not their impulses. For example, fear might whisper, "Be cautious." A wise person hears the warning, checks the facts, but does not allow fear to paralyze them. Anger might shout, "You have been wronged." A wise person hears the message, sets proper boundaries, but does not allow anger to dictate reckless action. To place emotions in their rightful role as servants requires discipline and self-awareness. It requires pausing when feelings surge and asking, "What is this emotion trying to tell me, and how can I use it without being ruled by it?" This practice turns raw impulses into refined wisdom. Instead of reacting blindly, one learns to channel energy into productive action. Anger becomes assertiveness, fear becomes alertness, sadness becomes empathy, and joy becomes motivation. Each emotion, when mastered, becomes a tool for growth rather than a chain that binds us. The great leaders of history, the innovators, and the visionaries all shared this common strength. They controlled their emotions rather than being controlled by them. They knew that to remain steady in turbulent times is a mark of greatness. While others were swept away by panic or passion, they remained grounded, using emotion as fuel, not as a steering wheel. Anyone can cultivate this strength by practicing awareness, reflection, and choice. To remember always that emotions knock on the door to offer guidance, but it is the mind and the will that decide which door to open and which path to walk. Silence often speaks louder than anger. In a world where voices clash and tempers flare, silence can cut deeper and carry more meaning than the loudest outburst. Anger is loud, it erupts like fire, but silence is steady, it lingers, it makes people think. When someone meets aggression with calm stillness, it disarms the situation in ways anger never could. Silence forces reflection, both for the one who practices it and for those who witness it. Where anger seeks to dominate, silence seeks to elevate. Where anger consumes energy, silence conserves it. And in conserving it, one gains clarity, power, and control over the moment. When a person chooses silence over anger, they refuse to hand over their power to circumstance or to others. Anger often makes us say words we later regret, words that cannot be taken back, words that damage trust and respect. Silence, on the other hand, gives space for thought, for understanding, and for restraint. It does not mean weakness, nor does it mean surrender. It is strength held in reserve, a discipline that signals mastery over emotion rather than enslavement to it. Many people believe that by raising their voice they show authority, but in truth, the one who stays composed in silence commands far greater respect. History is filled with examples of leaders, teachers, and thinkers who chose silence over rash reaction. Their silence was not emptiness but wisdom. It allowed them to observe, to listen, and to respond with precision instead of impulse. Silence carries weight because it is rare. Anyone can shout, but few can remain quiet with dignity. Silence creates space for others to hear themselves, to recognize the impact of their own words, and often that is more powerful than any argument. Silence also gives us control over ourselves. When anger surges, the body tightens, the mind narrows, and the tongue rushes to speak. But silence interrupts this chain. It allows us to breathe, to widen our perspective, and to see the situation not only from our own viewpoint, but also from the other side. In silence, we can ask ourselves, what outcome do I want? Will anger bring it, or will calmness? More often than not, silence points us toward a better path. It teaches patience, and patience always leads to strength. There is also a spiritual quality to silence. It reminds us that not everything requires a response, not every battle deserves to be fought, not every provocation is worth our peace of mind. Silence teaches humility, For it does not seek to prove, it simply is. It teaches endurance, for it holds back when every instinct demands release. And it teaches wisdom, for it waits until the right moment to act or to speak. In this way, silence outshines anger, because while anger burns hot and fades quickly, silence endures, leaving an impression that is both profound and lasting. Every reaction is a seed. You choose what it will grow into. Each time you respond to life, whether with patience, anger, kindness, or bitterness, you are planting something into the soil of your future. Seeds are small, often unnoticed, but they carry the potential to grow into towering trees or choking weeds. The reactions you give in moments of stress, frustration, or joy may seem insignificant at the time, yet they shape the course of your relationships, your reputation, and ultimately your destiny. What you sow in each moment determines what you will harvest in the seasons ahead. Think of how a kind word offered in the face of rudeness can plant a seed of respect that blossoms into trust. Consider how an angry outburst can plant a seed of resentment that may later grow into conflict and division. Each reaction is not isolated, it echoes, it multiplies, it influences not only you but those around you. Life is a garden, and your reactions are the daily planting. If you plant seeds of patience, you harvest peace. If you plant seeds of discipline, you harvest success. If you plant seeds of forgiveness, you harvest freedom. But if you plant seeds of anger, you harvest regret, and if you plant seeds of fear, you harvest limitation. The truth is, most people go through life scattering seeds without thought. They react out of habit, letting emotions dictate their planting. They are surprised when their garden is full of weeds, but they forget that it was their own reactions that sowed them. Wisdom begins when you realize that every moment is a choice. You cannot control the soil or the weather. Life will always bring challenges and storms, but you can control the seeds you place in the ground. By choosing your reactions carefully, you design the harvest you desire. This principle is seen clearly in relationships. A spouse who chooses to respond with patience instead of criticism plants seeds of trust and understanding that strengthen the bond over time. A leader who reacts with calmness in crisis plants seeds of confidence in their team that grow into loyalty. A parent who reacts with encouragement rather than harshness plants seeds of self-worth in a child that grow into resilience. The smallest reactions repeated over time create the largest outcomes. To master your reactions, you must learn to pause and reflect before acting. The pause is the space where wisdom enters. Ask yourself, what kind of seed am I about to plant? Will this action grow into something I want to see again? When you practice this awareness, you become intentional in your responses. Instead of scattering weeds, you begin to cultivate a garden filled with the fruits of patience, strength, and joy. Over the years, the results become undeniable. Those who master their reactions live in gardens of peace and abundance, while those who neglect them are trapped in fields of chaos they unknowingly planted themselves. Restraint is not weakness, but control. In a society that often glorifies immediate expression, quick retaliation, and impulsive action, restraint can be misunderstood as passivity or fear. Yet true restraint requires far more strength than indulgence. It is easy to speak when angry, to strike when provoked, or to indulge when tempted. What is difficult is holding back, pausing, and exercising the discipline to act with intention rather than impulse. Restraint is not the absence of power. It is power held in reserve, power guided by wisdom rather than by raw emotion. The person who practices restraint is not weaker than the one who lashes out. They are stronger because they have chosen mastery over self. Anger, greed, and desire can control anyone, but it takes a steady and disciplined individual to face those emotions and not be overtaken by them. Restraint is the difference between a wildfire that destroys everything in its path and a controlled flame that gives warmth and light. Both hold power, but one is ruled by chaos while the other is directed with purpose. Throughout history, some of the greatest leaders and thinkers have demonstrated restraint as their defining quality. They knew that to act in haste is to often regret later. By waiting, by holding their peace, they allowed clarity to rise above confusion. They were not silent because they lacked courage. They were silent because they were calculating, because they understood that every action taken in restraint multiplies in impact. A single word spoken after careful thought carries more weight than 1,000 shouted in anger. Restraint also builds respect. People quickly lose confidence in those who cannot control themselves. A leader who erupts at every challenge will soon find their influence diminished. But the leader who remains calm, who listens, who chooses the right time to act, inspires trust. Restraint communicates maturity, patience, and strength of character. It shows that one is not swayed by every emotion or provocation, but guided by principle and purpose. On a personal level, restraint protects relationships and preserves peace of mind. In moments of conflict, words spoken recklessly can wound deeply and leave scars that last for years. But choosing restraint, choosing to pause, allows for healing, understanding, and reconciliation. Restraint in habits also leads to growth. The person who restrains their desire for immediate gratification is the one who achieves long-term success, whether in health, wealth, or personal development. Restraint is the discipline of delayed gratification, the art of saying no to what does not serve the greater goal. Far from being weakness, restraint is the essence of self-mastery. It is not the suppression of energy but the channeling of it. It is knowing that you have the power to act, but also the wisdom to wait until the action is right. The strongest person is not the one who always acts, but the one who knows when not to act. Restraint is control, and in control lies the true measure of strength. Your peace of mind is more valuable than proving a point. Too often, people waste their energy trying to win arguments, defend their pride, or convince others of their perspective, forgetting that the cost is usually greater than the reward. The desire to prove a point may provide a momentary sense of victory, but it rarely brings lasting fulfillment. On the other hand, peace of mind is a treasure that sustains every aspect of life. When you guard your peace, you protect your clarity, your health, and your ability to focus on what truly matters. Arguments have a way of pulling us into battles that are rarely worth fighting. Winning them may feel satisfying for a short time, but they often damage relationships, stir resentment, and drain mental energy. What use is it to prove someone wrong if it leaves you restless and burdened afterward? Peace of mind allows you to walk away from such conflicts without regret. It reminds you that not every disagreement needs to be resolved, not every false accusation needs to be corrected, and not every critic deserves your attention. By choosing peace over pride, you preserve your strength for goals that uplift you rather than for conflicts that diminish you. Proving a point often comes from ego, from the need to be right or to be seen as superior. Yet life is not measured by how many arguments we win, but by how much harmony and fulfillment we create. Peace of mind nurtures relationships, fosters cooperation, and keeps your inner world calm even when the outer world is chaotic. When you learn to prioritize peace, you rise above the need for validation because you recognize that true confidence is silent and does not demand recognition. There is wisdom in choosing to let go, in allowing others to hold their opinions without feeling the need to challenge them. This does not mean you abandon truth or values, but that you recognize the futility of forcing others to see the world exactly as you do. Everyone lives from their own level of awareness, and sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is your silence. Walking away is not defeat, it is the protection of your own well-being. Peace of mind also influences your physical health. Stress, conflict, and the constant urge to prove yourself weigh heavily on the body and spirit. But when you prioritize peace, you invite calmness that strengthens your resilience, sharpens your focus, and keeps your energy directed toward progress. The mind at peace can think clearly, create boldly, and love deeply. Ultimately, your life is not defined by the points you prove, but by the peace you preserve. Every time you face the choice between feeding conflict or guarding your calm, remember the greater value. A quiet mind is a powerful mind, and peace is always worth more than pride. In patience, clarity is born. When we rush, when we force, when we demand immediate answers, our vision becomes clouded, and we mistake confusion for urgency. The hurried mind is restless, always reaching, always grasping, but rarely seeing the full picture. Patience, on the other hand, slows the current. It allows the muddy waters of thought and emotion to settle, revealing the truth beneath. In stillness, what was hidden becomes visible. Patience is not passive waiting. It is active trust that clarity comes not from haste, but from allowing time to reveal what is essential. Think of a stormy sea. When the waves are crashing and the water is churned, nothing beneath can be seen. Yet when the winds calm and the waters grow still, the depths become clear. The same is true of the human mind. When anger, fear, or desperation stir it, we act blindly, and blind action often leads to regret. But when we hold ourselves steady, when we allow patience to take root, understanding arrives naturally. Decisions made in patience carry weight because they are grounded in perspective, not in impulse. Patience also brings freedom. The impatient person is a prisoner of time, constantly anxious for results, unable to rest until every answer is immediate. The patient person, however, is free. They understand that life unfolds at its own rhythm, that growth takes seasons, and that not everything can be hurried. In patience, they find clarity not only about circumstances, but also about themselves. They learn what truly matters, what deserves their energy, and what can be released without loss. Clarity born of patience is the clarity that prevents mistakes and preserves peace. Many people regret words spoken in haste, decisions made in frustration, or opportunities missed because they could not wait. Patience creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space, wisdom takes root. It allows us to ask the right questions. Is this the right step? Is this aligned with my purpose? Will this matter in a year or in 10 years? Without patience, such questions are drowned out by noise. With patience, answers emerge naturally. Great achievements are rarely the product of speed alone. They are the result of persistence, endurance, and the ability to wait for the right moment. A seed cannot be forced to sprout by pulling on it, nor can a fruit be sweetened by plucking it too early. Life respects timing, and patience aligns us with that rhythm. In waiting, we do not lose, we prepare. We build strength, insight, and the ability to recognize opportunities when they finally arrive. In every aspect of life, relationships, work, personal growth, patience transforms chaos into clarity. It teaches us that not knowing today is not failure, but simply the unfolding of tomorrow. It shows us that wisdom is not found in rushing, but in waiting with trust. Clarity is the reward for those who resist the urge to act blindly and instead choose to let the truth reveal itself in its own time. Every great leader is slow to anger and quick to think. Leadership is not defined by position or authority, but by the ability to guide others with wisdom, composure, and vision. Anger clouds judgment, narrows perspective, and often turns moments of influence into moments of regret. The leader who is quick to anger loses the trust of those who follow, for people cannot place confidence in someone whose emotions rule their decisions. But the leader who remains calm under pressure, who refuses to be provoked by frustration or insult, demonstrates true strength. Such a leader shows that power is not about domination, but about mastery over oneself. To be slow to anger does not mean to feel nothing. It means to recognize emotion without being consumed by it. Anger can be a signal that something is wrong, that boundaries are crossed, or that injustice is present, but a wise leader does not let that first spark ignite an uncontrolled fire. They pause, they breathe, they assess the situation before responding. In that pause lies the difference between chaos and clarity, between failure and progress. A rash reaction can destroy years of effort, but a measured response can turn obstacles into opportunities. Great leaders throughout history have shown this quality. When others panicked, they stood firm. When others lashed out, they thought carefully. Their ability to think clearly in moments of tension gave them an advantage, for they could see solutions hidden from those blinded by emotion. To think quickly does not mean to act recklessly, but to process swiftly, to separate signal from noise, to recognize what matters and what does not. It is a mental agility that comes from discipline, self-awareness, and practice. This quality of being slow to anger and quick to think builds trust in followers. People are more willing to follow someone who remains composed during storms because they know that decisions are being made with reason rather than impulse. Trust is the foundation of leadership, and it is nurtured when people see that their leader cannot be easily shaken or provoked. A calm leader creates calm in their team, while an angry leader spreads fear and instability. The environment reflects the energy of the one who leads, and that energy must be steady, balanced, and focused. On a personal level, this principle applies beyond leadership roles. In daily life, the person who practices restraint in anger and sharpness in thought naturally becomes an example to others. Families, communities, and organizations thrive under the guidance of those who choose composure over chaos. It is a discipline that begins with small choices, choosing to listen instead of interrupt, choosing to pause instead of erupt, choosing to understand instead of condemn. Each choice strengthens the ability to lead not by force but by influence. Every great leader knows that true authority is not in the loudness of their voice but in the steadiness of their mind. To be slow to anger and quick to think is to walk the path of wisdom, and wisdom is what transforms ordinary individuals into leaders who leave a lasting impact. You cannot always control others, but you can always control yourself. Life constantly reminds us of this truth, though many people resist it. They waste time and energy trying to change the behavior of others, expecting the world to move in harmony with their desires. Yet no matter how hard one tries, people will act according to their own nature, their own choices, and their own circumstances. The real power lies not in bending others to our will, but in mastering our own thoughts, emotions, and actions. This mastery is what gives a person peace of mind, influence, and strength in every situation. When you attempt to control others, frustration is inevitable, for people are not clay to be molded by your hands. They are individuals with their own beliefs and impulses, and often they will resist the very control you try to impose. But when you shift focus inward and choose to control yourself, you step into true freedom. You no longer depend on how others behave to determine your mood or direction. You decide your response, your attitude, and your outlook regardless of the circumstances. That choice is where real strength resides. Consider how conflicts unfold. A harsh word is spoken and one person reacts with anger, escalating the tension. Another person, hearing the same word, chooses calmness, and the conflict dissolves before it begins. The difference lies not in the provocation, but in the response. You cannot always prevent the insult, the disappointment, or the unfairness, but you can always decide how you meet it. By controlling yourself, you turn potential chaos into stability. This principle applies in every area of life. In leadership, those who try to control others through force or manipulation eventually lose respect. But those who lead themselves with discipline and composure naturally inspire others to follow. In relationships, trying to force people into change breeds resentment, while changing yourself often becomes the very influence that encourages growth in others. In personal development, blaming the world or others keeps you stagnant, but taking responsibility for your own actions sets you free to improve. Self-control is not repression, it is direction. It is the ability to choose patience instead of haste, kindness instead of bitterness, focus instead of distraction. It is not about denying emotions, but about guiding them so they serve rather than sabotage you. Every time you choose to control yourself, you strengthen your character and reinforce your independence from external forces. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become an active creator of your destiny. The truth is, the world will never fully align with your wishes. People will disappoint you, situations will change, and challenges will arise. But none of these have the power to dictate who you are unless you give them that power. By controlling yourself, you carry peace in the midst of storms, clarity in the midst of confusion, and strength in the midst of opposition. And that control, once mastered, becomes the foundation of a life lived with dignity and purpose. Mastering your emotions is the first step to mastering your life. Emotions are powerful forces that influence the way we think, speak, and act. They shape the quality of our decisions, the strength of our relationships, and the direction of our journey. When emotions control us, we become prisoners of circumstance, tossed around by whatever happens in the moment. But when we learn to control them, we unlock the ability to navigate life with clarity, strength, and purpose. Emotional mastery does not mean suppressing what we feel. It means understanding our emotions, directing them, and using them as fuel rather than allowing them to take the wheel. Every decision we make is colored by emotion. Fear may hold us back from opportunities, anger may damage relationships, impatience may push us into mistakes. On the other hand, courage inspires us to act, gratitude opens doors of possibility, and calmness helps us see clearly when others are lost in confusion. Mastery is the art of recognizing which emotions serve us and which ones sabotage us. It is the discipline of pausing before reacting, of channeling the energy of emotion into constructive choices instead of destructive impulses. A person who has not mastered their emotions may have talent, intelligence, and resources, but they will find themselves constantly undermined by their own lack of control. They will ruin opportunities because of rash words, burn bridges because of pride, or abandon dreams because of fear. Yet someone with emotional mastery, even with fewer resources, can achieve greatness because they remain steady where others fall apart. They know that storms will come, but instead of panicking, they anchor themselves. This steadiness allows them to endure challenges and recognize opportunities that emotional turbulence would otherwise obscure. The process of mastering emotions begins with awareness. It requires noticing what you feel in the moment and asking, what is this emotion trying to tell me, and how do I want to respond? With practice, this awareness creates a gap between feeling and action, and in that gap lies freedom. It is in that space that you decide whether to lash out or to stay calm, whether to give in to fear or to act with courage. Each time you choose wisely, you strengthen your control. Over time, emotional mastery becomes second nature. This mastery also builds influence. People are drawn to those who can stay calm under pressure, who do not crumble under stress, who do not allow anger or panic to dictate their behavior. Such individuals naturally become leaders because others trust their stability. In relationships, emotional mastery fosters harmony because it prevents unnecessary conflicts and nurtures understanding. In personal growth, it fuels consistency because it keeps you from quitting when emotions run high and discipline is most needed. To master your life, you must begin with the inner world, for it is from within that every action flows. By mastering your emotions, you take command of yourself, and when you command yourself, no external force can master you. Emotional mastery is the key that unlocks freedom, success, and peace. The message woven through the entire speech is simple but profound. Life is not determined by what happens around us, but by what happens within us. Emotions, reactions, restraint, patience, silence, and self-control are not small matters of temperament. They are the foundation upon which true strength and success are built. To react is instinct, but to respond is wisdom. To let emotions rule is to live as a servant of circumstance, but to master them is to take command of one's destiny. Every choice we make plants a seed, and the harvest depends on whether we choose anger or calm, haste or patience, pride or peace. The greatest leaders and the most fulfilled lives are marked not by loudness, but by steadiness, not by constant struggle to control others, but by the quiet discipline of controlling oneself. Mastering your emotions is the first step to mastering your life, and in that mastery lies the clarity, peace, and power to shape a destiny of your choosing.